Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Camille Essek. I'm the host of the Speaker Podcast, and this is the podcast where innovators and creators connect. Be sure to hit that notification bell and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and across various social media platforms. So right now we're on Facebook at the Speaker Podcast, on YouTube at Camille Essek Official, also on Instagram. Be sure to follow me at Camille.Essek, and I would love to hear from you. So you can also send me an email at the speaker podcast at gmail.com. Now, if you've been following the show, he is no stranger. He's actually a really good friend of mine, someone I call a brother, multi-talented, really smart. He's the king of Zumba. He does so many things. If you've ever seen any of the HBCU Battle of the Bands, this is the face behind that brand. We're going to talk about a lot of things, and he's also a giver. Okay, so before I hop into plugging in everything, I have to give Derek his flowers. Um, from season one, when I wasn't sure if I wanted to podcast, even though I knew this is like, hey, God wants me to do this, but I was in a space of uncertainty. From day one, from the beginning, Derek has supported me. He's rocked with me. He's been on every season, heart and soul, every panel. He's been there, even with his space convo and collabs, and he's just really ingrained into the history of the podcast. And from having just 2 subscribers, 2 followers, to now we're streaming in 49 countries and 942 cities. And first time I applied for iHeartRadio, they told me no, to being told yes and being picked up by different platforms. Throughout everything, Derek is there. So anytime I bring him to the show, it just warms my heart on so many different levels. So I definitely want you all to drop hearts in the comments below for Derek. And I just want to say, Derek, I love you and I appreciate you so much. And welcome back.
Oh, well, you know what? I love you too, and let's give it up for you for continuing to do what many people fail to do, which is be consistent and continue on,
Mhm.
right? And to see your growth, even from your graphics to like, I was sitting here like a Golden Door production. What's going on? Like, I've been walking up the steps in the pre. Listen, kudos to you for continuing to evolve, to push the limits, and not saying no, to creating space and conversations, right? Where innovators and creators connect. I love it. I love you, and continue to shine and do the amazing things that you're doing. And again, I'm always here to support however I can.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I did mention it. So combos and collabs, are we gonna see that again? Like what's going on with that? Because just you in that space having authentic conversation, impactful and insightful conversation, I really enjoyed it. So like will we see it again? Like what's going on with that?
We may see it again in the future. I know right now my one of my best friend, Natasha, she's actually in the chat. We are working on revamping a podcast that I started before Combos and Collab, which is Can I Get a Repost? And so we've been talking about doing something together to kind of show the dynamics of our friendship, from a male's point of view, female's point of view, and just the dynamics of our friendship, talking about everything under the sun, really getting very personal, philosophical and all that good stuff.
I
So
love it.
we're working on that. We actually were recording an episode this Saturday. So we're in works behind the scenes, but combos and collabs that may come back on the business side of things. I think having that business piece and a lot of things I've been working on. I think I have a few more things to say there. So you never know, it might come back. But I'll let you know. I'll give you the exclusive. I'll give you the
Please,
heads up
please.
first.
And maybe we can get Tasha on and we can talk about when you all launch your first episode and just kind of push that because just as you supported the speaker podcast, I definitely want to push combos and collabs. So maybe we do like a exclusive hey y'all hey episode to let people know you all are back on air. That would be awesome. So
It's awesome. I appreciate it. Yeah, we can definitely do that.
oh
Look at
yeah.
Tasha clapping.
Sharing is caring, okay? So I really wanna get in also, you're on the board with We Inspire. So I
Yes.
love the mission of this, nonprofit organization. For those that are not familiar, can you let us a little bit more about We Inspire?
Yeah, so We Inspire is a nonprofit organization that I am actually the chairperson of the board of. Or over it's we're celebrating 10 years. So it started as a single day of inspiration, and now we're an international news organization sharing positivity. Our mission which we've updated recently is really amplifying the stories and the voices of Black and brown and indigenous millennials, right? And so in
Mm.
a space where positive news and stories that are not necessarily framed in the best light for millennials of color, be it Black, brown, or indigenous, are not really available. And so we want to, create access to stories, to information about what they're doing in their communities, amplifying those voices. And so that's our new mission, very focused, very intentional. And so we have our 10-year celebration in DC. So if you're in the DMV area, it's on April 19th. You can go to weinspiremovement.org, where we have tickets still on sale. You can still donate, and all that good stuff. So yeah, I'm excited. It's been a journey, but it is something that I think is needed in the world that we live in today. And the more we can amplify those voices, show representation, and amplify the message to counteract some of the negative things that are always portrayed, typically mainstream media, then I'm all about it.
I love it. And also be sure to tag us, the Speaker Podcast on Facebook. That way we can share as well and get the word out also on Instagram because I would love to push that, especially with the 10-year anniversary coming up so others can know. I would love to do that. So
Awesome, we'll do.
cool. Getting right into the conversation, Derek. We all always have these deep and insightful conversations. One of the things, as we learn and grow in these spaces, um, we meet people we're like, they're good for me right now, but what about the long game? So let's kind of unpack or your thoughts on making tough decisions as far as people in your life for the right now versus making decisions for long term because we can have
Mhm.
things and people are in our lives for the moment, but it's like, are they here just to fill a space? Or is this someone that as a friend or brother or an acquaintance that I can grow with and they can grow with me over a longer period of time? And I get it, people, are here for reasons and seasons and certain
Mhm.
times. But when it comes to your circle,
Yeah.
when you see you're kind of growing apart, what do you think about maybe shifting? I look at people like a bullseye, like you have your circle, your nucleus, and then the rings
Mhm.
that go out. So what about making those tough decisions where someone that may have been on in the nucleus, but now they're in the outer courts?
Out of courts, right? Well, I'll tell a quick story. So in 2017, I shut down essentially my business.
Mhm,
I My contract didn't get renewed, and so I knew it was coming, and so I ended up telling my team, "Hey, you have a year to probably find another position and things of that nature. I want to prepare you for what's potentially going to happen. I don't want you caught in like a deer in headlights, right?" And so it ended up happening. And so at that point, I was just kind of in limbo, and I was like, I felt unfulfilled. I felt lost and confused around my business. I was clear on my purpose in my business when I started, and at that point, I was just kind of in limbo. And so I was like, I need a new tribe. I need a new community that's going to inspire me, that's going to drive me, that's going to want me to do better because I see them doing better. And so I went to a conference. First time ever going to a business conference by myself, 2017. I bought the ticket. I flew to San Antonio, Texas, never been there before. Went to the
mhm.
conference, didn't know a soul there. And to this day, I want to say about 5 or 6 people that I met in my conference at that conference are in my circle today. And so for me, it was more about who am I and what am I looking, what fills me up, and really thinking about the the intention of what capacity do I have to give to someone else, and what capacity do I need in return? Because everybody cannot fill the gallon that's me, right?
Right.
And so I look at what can individuals contribute, and understanding that maybe they only can contribute but a certain amount, and
Mhm.
not give them an expectation that they can't fill. Like if they're not a gallon person, I don't want to give them gallon expectations, right? And
Right.
so it was really me understanding what I needed, where I was, what type of individuals that I was looking for, where I wanted to go. So the vision had to first start with me, what I saw for myself, what kind of support that I want. Did I want yes people in my circle? No, I wanted people that was going to call me on the carpet, that was going to hold me accountable. And so therefore, I needed to make sure that those people could do that in the foundation of a friendship, but then also in the foundation of like if we wanted to do business, right? Do they have integrity? So it was really
Mhm.
understanding my values, understanding where I wanted to go, and the people that could support and be along for that journey. And so yeah, it took me some time. I let people go, and at that point, I wasn't sorry about it because again, they served their purpose, and each we served each other's purpose in each other's lives. But as we were growing apart, there was nothing left really there for us to engage, like especially when the conversation started really getting drab. It was just like, hey, how you doing? Hey, and we really had nothing to talk about. There was no
Very surface,
common,
yes.
yeah, very surface level. And so I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just an evolution, and I think it's something that we as individuals we need to be okay that that's a part of life.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong. They didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. We just drifted away. And I can still have love for them and still wish them the best, but doesn't mean that they have a role for where I'm going and who I am now today. And that's okay, right? You don't have to dismiss them. You don't talk bad about it. It's nothing bad at all, right?
Yeah,
And so for me, that's what that journey was about. And so now when I look at my circle, I'm very intentional about who I bring in because I'm clear on the energy that I want to have around me, the peace that I want to have me, but then also when I want to have conversations, who can have those type of conversations and who can, pivot back and forth between the things that I need because I'm that type of person as well. And
yeah,
so I look for that. And so yeah, it was a journey, but I think for anybody that's listening and having that conversation, first check with yourself because you are responsible for you before anybody else.
that's good.
So if what's in your space, what's in your circle isn't feeding you, isn't supporting you, then you have to first make a decision of what you need and then act accordingly after that.
That's really good. I was listening to something, may have been yesterday, and, we hear this term boundaries, it comes
Hmm.
up, but they began to challenge the thought of I think it might have been Dr. Drew. I don't know if you remember the, talk show host Dr. Drew, and
Yeah.
he was talking to Kiki Palmer, and he was really describing and going deeper into what boundaries meant. He was like, "A lot of times when you use the word boundary and we think of it as just a physical thing. Like if someone calls, you're like, "Oh, I'm setting my boundary," but not realizing it goes deeper than physical. But he started talking about emotional boundaries, not even for the other person, but for you. And he used the example like you ever had a conversation with someone and particularly with those that are empaths, and maybe let's say someone was in a relationship with someone, they broke up, and you really in that emotional place with them to the point where it um impacts you because it takes you back to that point. And it's like, yes, support your friend, but even set the boundary to where it doesn't bring you back to the emotional space. We hear the word trigger. He said a lot of
Hmm.
times you want to be supportive. He said, but also learn how to set the emotional boundary for yourself where you can show up and be present with someone, but not allow them to take you all the way back to a space that you spent so much time healing
Hmm.
from. And I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
We just think of boundaries as far as, I go to bed at 9:30 or,
Yeah.
if I go out, make sure I'm home by a certain time, but taking that word boundary to another level and even saying with yourself, like, you know what? If I'm on social media and I see someone's face and maybe it wasn't always a positive interaction, setting that boundary for yourself to say, "No, not doing that. We're not doing that today," and capturing those thoughts because we're setting boundaries for other people, but what boundaries do you have for yourself within yourself?
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's very important. I think to your point, it first comes with understanding again what you need. Self self actualization, enlightenment, self awareness. It's hard work.
Mhm.
Is sometimes it can be very lonely work because it will require you to make decisions that are counterintuitive to what you've been told or taught about. Oh well, that's just how that person is, or that's family, so you should put up with them, and you should no, that's not real, that's not true, and that's not what we doing in 2024.
Right.
And so I think it's important to understand, in the space of boundary setting, that boundaries is also not it's for you to show what do I need to make sure that I'm good. And then it's also to show you who loves you enough and respects you enough to honor those boundaries, no
Mhm.
matter what that may be, right? If I love you and you say, hey, Derek, I just, when you talk about XYZ, it really brings me down and things of that nature, then I'm going to make sure that, like, oh, you know what? I am so sorry. I'm going to make sure that not to talk about that subject or whatever is around you because I know how it impacts you.
Right.
And then my role is to maybe find somebody that I can talk to that about. It doesn't mean that you're not a good friend. It means that I love you enough not to put you in a place of discomfort. And I'm aware enough that, okay, Camille may not be able to support me in that capacity on that
Mm,
particular piece, but who can? And that's
right.
where that awareness comes in. And that's why you have a tribe and you have a community. One thing that I've learned about boundary setting is that you have to stick with it. A lot of times we'll bend and we'll be like, oh, well, I don't want to have a difficult conversation with somebody, or I don't feel like, going down this rabbit hole or explaining my boundary to somebody. So you'll kind of let it slide. And it's like, no, you have to stick to it. With anything that you're going to get results, and you have to be consistent with it, and you have to stick to it. And again, it's not about them. They will be all right. I'm not, they are in charge of their emotions. I'm not in charge of that. I'm in charge of what I need. I'm in charge of how I show up and what I need to do for Derek, so that I can be the best version of myself for the spaces that I have to show up in and pour into and give.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's been my journey with boundaries, and I'm still working on them. But language is very important when it comes to boundaries. I think people. I was listening to somebody today. We're talking about, most people, about 50% of the country only understand and reads at a sixth grade level. And so
Mm,
when you think about language and you think about how we understand and articulate and explain things, everybody doesn't consume and understand at the same level. And so if
right.
I'm asking somebody for something, they may not understand what I'm asking because I know and clear about it, but it may not be translating the same way. So
Mhm.
even thinking about language, I remember I told my mom one time, I was like, I just don't have the capacity to take on anything else. And I think for the first time, she got it,
Mm,
because she was like, I get the capacity thing.
right.
She never understood it, but when I used a different language, I said, "Hey, I just don't have the capacity right now for that." And every now and every since then, she says, every when you said that, I understood. I understood what she could visualize and see it. And so
Yeah.
that's why I said language is important when you're trying to explain boundaries or even communicate with other people, because everybody communicates in different ways. So understanding your language, keeping it simple, don't overdo it, state what it is that you need, the why, and and go from there. And people who love you and support and really care will inquire, well, how can I support you, right? And the people who just like, well, you tripping, then look at them a couple more times, because they might not necessarily be the right people in your space, because they're not really, they're making it about them and not about you.
Out of courts.
Out of courts. Out of courts.
So, and going into that, now let's look at limiting our access to preserve ourselves, right? Because if you're not respecting that, and what I call the repeat offenders, now we have to shift you from being the nucleus to the outer
Yeah.
courts, because you're not respecting um me attempting to a voice to you where I may have been and things I've experienced. And if it's not coming across, like you said, it's not translating, let's kind of unpack the shift of access now at this point. What
Yeah.
does that look like?
I have two different phones. I have a work phone and I have a personal phone. Work phone only, mostly with work stuff. If you're not a good friend, a close friend, or whatever the case may be, then you do not have my personal phone number. You only have my work phone number. And then my work phone cuts off at a certain time. My email only comes to my work phone. That way I have separation. I used to have everything on one phone, which would give people access to me 24/7,
Mhm,
even for work. And I would just be like, ah. So that was one of the first steps that I took to limit access.
mhm.
So that way, people who really need to have me or really need to be close to me have my personal number. They know how to reach me, and I'm good with that. And people that I need to keep at a distance, that's not really in that space, they get my work phone number, and that's that's how I kind of keep it. But I think at the end of the day, it's all about, for me, it's all about energy.
Mhm.
I'm very clear on the type of energy that I want to be around, the type of atmospheres I want to go into, the type of ecosystems I want to be involved in. And so if I even get a hint that it's something that does not align with where I want to be, I will not go.
Yeah.
And I don't apologize for it. And
Like, who's
so
all over there? That's
I'm that person. Who all over there? Who's coming? Because I know it's important to preserve. And like when you talk about, access to you,
yeah.
right? That's important. And you control the access points, right? And so if I'm going to put myself in a position where people have access to me, I want it to be of the highest level possible, right? I want to be poured into just as I pour out. And if it's not going to be that, and I have a hint that it's not going to be that, I'm not going to go, because I
Reciprocity.
I I get to choose. I get to
Yes.
choose. And so for me, that's what that looks like for me. It's very intentional, it's very clear. I don't say I say this all the time, and I'll drop it for the people who are listening. Don't say yes when you mean no. That's one of the biggest lessons that I had to learn
Please
because
say
I
that
felt
again for the people
guilty.
in the back.
Don't say yes when you really mean no.
Mm,
So if your heart's a heart, you don't want to go, don't say yes. Because then what happens is you bring that energy, oh, I don't want to go, oh, I don't want to be there, I don't want to be, and you take all that energy into that person's space instead of just saying no from the get-go, right? And then if you want to say yes, then yes. And your energy is very different when you say yes to something you want to do, right? If people just take a step back and think about it, it's like it is different. When I want to do something, I'm excited, I'm geeked up, I'm ready to go.
mm.
When I don't want to, I have every excuse. Oh, why'd I say yes? I should have said no. Say no then. Don't say yes when you mean no. And that's been one of the biggest lessons that I think about in every situation. Do I want the drama and the dread and the anxiety of having to try to get out of something that I should have said no to in the first place? No, I don't want that. So I don't create that space for me to exist in my life.
That's good, and even when we do that, we rob everyone, including ourselves, of the experience because you're not showing up as your authentic self because you didn't wanna be there, you know?
Absolutely.
Or you come off as, like you're doing this as a favor, like, "Well, I'm here now," and it's like, you coulda stayed home. We don't need the
You didn't
energy."
have to be here, right?
Yeah, so it's like everyone gets robbed of the experience, those there and then for you, because maybe there was another gem or nugget you could have gotten from the experience, but because you didn't wanna be there, there's a wall to a degree. So everything's not filtering through properly because your lens is off because in your mind, "I didn't wanna be here," and maybe that one person that you could have connected to take your life to another level, because you came off as standoffish, you're not approachable. So then you miss that connection.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's very true. And then then what representation are you putting out there, right? And sometimes you only have that first one time to really make a true first impression. People might
Very
give you a
true.
second chance, but they're also thinking about that first time. And so it's also a way to protect you from showing up inauthentic to places
Mm,
where you don't necessarily want to be, right?
right.
And bringing the wrong energy. Because I mean, at the end of the day, emotions are going to lead your reactions. And so if you haven't mastered how to navigate your emotions, how to take a break to let it subside so that you can get to a clear space where you're making decisions intentionally and not letting them be led by emotional decisions,
Mhm.
then it's you want to keep yourself out of those spaces until you begin to master that process.
That's really good, Derek. And as we're journeying, going through this journey of, it seems like a lot of people are going through transition with friendships and relationships and circles. And maybe it comes with, birthdays. It seems like every 5 years or so, people are rotating. So let's kind of unpack vetting the new people and even doing inventory on those that have been there, because roles can change, people grow apart. Not that you fell out, but like you
Hmm.
mentioned before, sometimes, we grow and we outgrow people. So for you, let's kind of unpack the vetting process when we had this term, no new friends. Like, no, you should always meet new people, your next
Yeah.
blessing, or vice versa. Maybe you could be a blessing to someone else. So just qualifying and vetting individuals.
Mhm. I think for me, the vetting process is I'm now an action person. I want to see how people show up, and are you going to do what you said you were going to do? Are you who you say you are, right? Especially when we were in pandemic, right? There was a lot of virtual friendships created, and people were
Yes.
just, oh, and so it was like, okay, cool. Well, are you the same person off camera and in person as you are on camera and digitally, right? A lot of people
You
will
are.
will
We met in person. You are.
yeah, we met in person. We got a picture to prove it. Check our socials. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things, and that's that's one of my big indicators, right? Do you have the same energy that you portray, right? Are you consistent with who you are and how you show up to be? And so I'm always paying attention to that. I'm paying attention to the people that are around you as well. How you
Mhm,
talk about those individuals, how you show up. Do you talk crash money dirt about them when you're with me? Because if you do that with them, you'll do that to me, right? So I'm
mhm,
just paying attention to how people move, and I'm very watchful, right? I'll open up a little bit and I'll give a little bit and I'll see how that goes, and if they give a little bit back, and so it's really kind of like a back and forth, a give and take, right? Okay, I'll give a little, You give a little, I take a little, you take a little, and then eventually you kind of see how that dance goes, right? It's not being, people say, oh, that's not being fake. It's being very intentional, right?
Mhm.
You shouldn't be opening up yourself as a full book to the first person that you meet, right? You don't know their intentions, they don't know yours. So take time to build a relationship. It takes time to build quality relationships. So don't rush it. Take the time, right? Nobody is saying that you have to be a best friend with somebody when you meet them day one by day 10. No. Only you create those boundaries. And I mean, not those boundaries, only you create those parameters and those unrealistic expectations. Take your
Yeah.
time. There's no rush. And so for me, that's the vetting process is taking my time, giving people the opportunity to show up as themselves, right? Letting the honeymoon phase, fade out, because even in romantic relationships, there's honeymoon phase in platonic relationships, right? You're so excited. We hung out, we had a great time at this trip. Okay, cool. Well,
Yep, and
what's
love
post
bomb
trip?
and friendship happens just like it does in relationships. People don't
Absolutely.
realize when you meet new friends, air quotes, they can, air quotes, love bomb you just like a potential person you would date can as well.
Hmm. Yeah. So is that
"Oh,
consistency?
me too, yes, queen, yeah." Like, girl,
Hmm.
and then find
Right.
out you're a whole other person 6 months down the road, and it's like,
Right.
"Oh, that was a representative. That wasn't you, that was a representative."
Exactly. So yeah, that's important. It's important, like you said, that love bombing. It's important to pay attention to, do those individuals have their own voice? Or are they always co-signing with what you say, right? Do they
Mm,
challenge? Do they call you on the carpet if it's something that's uncomfortable to them, right?
mhm,
And I think those are great conversations and situations to be in early on in your friendship and as you're vetting individuals, because then you navigate conflict. You see how people navigate conflict. Do you get mad and just, throw up your hands and then pop off, or do you say, hey, well, let's have a conversation, this is how you made me feel, this is how, this is how I perceive you, or this is how you're showing up for me? Because
mhm,
sometimes the individual doesn't know how they're showing up, and so sometimes they need someone to reflect, hey, this is my experience of you, you know call them in to have a conversation. Don't call them out. That's a term that people talk about. We talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. When someone does something that makes you uncomfortable, or they may not know, they may not be aware, they may just not have an understanding of what their comments did or said, and so you call them in to have a conversation, and hopefully in that moment you educate them, or you bring enlightenment to them, or a better understanding and clarity, because if you have a relationship, then they're more prompt to then make adjustments, because they're connected to your feelings and how you feel, right? And so one to one, you can have a greater impact, and by calling someone in and having a conversation, really sharing, as opposed to calling them out. Well, you said this, and this could just be a misunderstanding, or just they just don't have the awareness.
yeah,
And so we have a responsibility that, I always say, if someone has done you wrong or made you feel a certain way, it's up to us to call them in to have that conversation. They may not know how we feel. And so us going around and having these attitudes, oh, such and such did this and did that. Okay,
posted on
well,
social media.
right.
You know,
Have a
sometimes some
conversation.
people like just talk to the person and you can sub post and the person not even see your post.
And
They
you'll
may
be
not even
surprised
read
how
it.
right. And you'll be surprised how that happens more often than not, even in professional spaces.
Yeah.
Because again, we're still just dealing with individuals, and people are
Mhm.
still affected by the traumas of their childhood, and sometimes their young adulthood. And so a lot of times people are responding in that childlike mindset, or that childlike, let me stop, mindset, that childlike energy and emotions.
Mhm.
And so they show up in that space at work, right? Or in their relationships or in their friendships. And because now everybody's always called them out, no one's called them in, they're on the defensive every
Yeah.
time.
'Cause we're
So
in a clapback culture. We're so quick to clap
listen,
the cancel culture, the clapback culture, and it's like, let's have a culture of
con-
conversation.
conversation, yes. And you'll be surprised how common and how alike we are. Like it's crazy how much we're all human, and there's only so many emotions and feelings that are out there, and guess what, we all have them, and we have them in different ways in different spaces, but there's a connection because we all share the same emotions: fear, sadness, happiness, joy, you know all those things we share, and the multitude of other, right, names for those feelings, we all share them. And so that, therefore, we have a connection in that, in and of itself. So why not start there? We all have the same emotions. So sometimes let's be aware that, oh, somebody else might be hurt too,
Yeah.
might be sad too, might be happy. But anyway, yeah, it's really just having a understanding. And sometimes people are, well, I got to be the bigger person. Why not you? If you have an awareness, and if you have this awareness, enlightenment, this type of emotional intelligence that other people don't have, then as the wiser one, you are responsible to teach others, right? That's why we have teachers in school, right? They're wiser, so they teach the youth, right? That's why you have mentors. It's a part of the culture. And so you being wiser are called on to be a mentor, officially or unofficially, to people who may not necessarily be in that space.
That's good. Derek, it's starting to get hot outside.
Yes, the
So
hot.
what's the weather, the temperatures are going up, up, up.
Hmm.
And we're starting to see people we haven't seen in 6 months, and for some it might be the shorts, the zaddy season, the zaddy shorts, and then for some it may be sundress weather.
It
It's
could be.
among us. It's approaching quickly. So what about, when we see things that are people that maybe um they catch our eye, but they're not good for our heart.
Listen, those that have eyes and ears let them hear and see. I would say this. I would say, mm, at the end of the day, it's okay to look. It's okay. I mean, we all have eyes. We're all, are attracted to different things, different people. And so, we're going to naturally look, right? That's just human nature. But I would say, look and think before you act. It's okay to
Mm,
look. It's okay to think, like, oh, cool. But it's the action that gets us in trouble. And so I would say, think about actions. Even think about a movie and pre-play. What are the possible outcomes of my decision in this moment, right?
the alternate ending.
The alternate endings, right? And so, and that's real. Like for me, because I work in the space of public relations and I deal with a lot of crisis communication with clients. My job and my role is to think of the different scenarios, is to think of the
Mm,
different outcomes. If we do X, what will Y be? If we do Z, what would A be? Right? I need to look at all scenarios because I need to chart a course. Like if we do this, I need to see all the possible outcomes here. And so naturally, you think about that. And for me, and so I would tell people out there, think about it before, right? A lot of times that initial, emotional response, that dopamine, whatever that is, that's causing you to be like, oh my goodness, okay, that will fade.
yeah.
So get you a practice, get you in like, okay, I see that, that's cool. Okay, what are the thoughts, right? What are the thoughts that's running in my mind in that moment? Like, what am I saying? Like, okay, well, is that actually healthy? Is that good? Do I need to be doing
Mhm.
that? What is my focus? What are my goals? Like, so a lot of times everything else falls to the wayside in that particular moment.
And there's
And that's how a
always
lot of people
Google.
get caught up.
And there's
There's
always
always Google,
Google,
right?
and it works. And I say that because during the pandemic, I was, running errands on a Saturday, and I was at FedEx Kinko's and ran into a guy, or he ran into me. I was on my way out of the,
Mm-hmm.
establishment, and he stopped me. Nice looking, tall, whatever. I was like, "Okay." And he's talking, so he was on his way out as well. And I'm a very observant person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm watching and looking and observing, and I'm thinking, You know how you get that, I'm just
Your
letting him. Yes,
senses.
and so, he's like, "Oh, I'm an entrepreneur," and so he made sure I saw his car, and I'm thinking, "Okay." But that discernment, that intuition, the gut feeling, the
Listen,
whatever you wanna call it, it was like, and something told me, "Ask for his business card." And he's like, "Oh," doing all the pat down. "Oh, I have one." He's like, "Well, can I have lunch with you?" And I'm like, "Okay." So we met up for lunch same day, and he's just talking and talking and talking, and I'm thinking about this business card. But during the conversation, there were so many verbal cues, not only what he was saying, but things he did not say, or the way he would answer a question, but fail to leave out things you would think someone would include.
yeah.
He's like, "I wanna have dinner with you tomorrow." And I was like, let me check my schedule." And I'm thinking, "Girl, you've got that business card." And after the lunch, as older people, they put "the" on everything. I got on the Google.
The Google.
And I looked at the business card, the most ambiguous business card ever.
Mm,
It had the name of the company, his name, but no information, no address, no phone number, no email. And I'm thinking, okay,
What business is that?
right. And so I thought, well, if and then at LLC, so I was like, oh, well, he had to register with the Secretary of State. So I put the business name on that site. Boom, all the things start coming up. There's names, there's addresses. So I'm like, okay, we're getting somewhere. I'm seeing phone numbers. And so those that don't know me, I was in the Navy for 8 years. In the last 4 years, I was a paralegal for JAG. And so you know how to find some people, a little piece of
Mm-hmm.
information. So he was telling me he was from New York. So something said, tapped me on my shoulder, and I said, "Hmm." And my sis said, "Girl, run that name on the state of New York Department of Corrections." And
Listen.
so we did, and it was like Vegas. Ding, 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 all this, I mean, and I was
Wow.
like, "What?" And so then something was like, well, if he's in North Carolina, see if he has some stuff here. So I went on North Carolina Department of Corrections website. He had stuff like current recent because I remember him saying that he was trying to get some paperwork to his attorney. So I'm looking at the dates and I said that's why he was in FedEx Kinko's was because of his current
His current situation.
situations. Okay. And so the addresses that that I found from the Secretary of State, I started putting that stuff in Google with his name, and there was listings for a shooting involving 2 people,
Oh,
someone had died.
wow.
Like, it was just a lot of stuff. And so, long story short, ended up blocking him on social media because he had found me and tried to request me. The number he gave me, I blocked that, and I thought, "This is James St. Patrick."
Listen, this
He is
ghost.
like a great value James St. Patrick, and I
Listen. Mm-mm.
mm-mm.
Take time. But see, and that goes back to the earlier question, like how do you eliminate people or block people or vet people? And it's that instinct, right? There's a feeling, and then you go and do your due diligence, right?
Yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with that because again, you run your life, you control your life, so you are responsible for who you let in and what you
yeah.
allow in your space. And it's like,
'Cause
no,
he
I
was
ain't
like,
got
"Yeah,
time for that.
I'm gonna open a coffee shop, and, I'm an entrepreneur." So I'm like, "Okay, coffee shop." But I was like, "Something about this story is not going over well." Even
It's
though
not going.
on the outside, look put together, nice looking guy, driving high-end vehicle, whatever, but God
That
said
word right
no.
there, preach. That word right there, preaching of itself on the outside.
On the
Look all
outside.
put together on the outside, but what's going on the background?
Definitely on the outer court. Yeah, so it definitely I think, as we're going into the season, don't get caught up on the exterior. What's that saying? All that glitters is not gold.
So
And
absolutely,
on the outside, he looked like gold, but inside it was like aluminum.
yeah. It was
So
plated on the outside all day.
yeah, and I just wonder like how many women probably would not have done their due diligence or even they would have been so caught up in the exterior, they didn't take time to investigate. So said all that to say as the weather
Mhm.
begins to warm up, buyer beware.
Buyer beware for real. Like,
Yeah.
you have to, again, I want people to move with intention about what they want and what they desire. Because a lot of people say they want one thing, but they won't do the work that requires to have that. Sometimes it
Yeah.
requires separation. Sometimes it requires, quietness and stillness, right? For the thing that you really truly desire. And so,
Mhm.
but a lot of people want to fill that space and time with just something to do in the meantime. Well, in the meantime, I'm going to do this. And it's like, well, in the meantime, you're taking up real estate in your life that could be waiting, that could be being cultivated for somebody else to really can, can use that real estate and
Yeah.
help bring it up, right? Or you can cultivate somebody that's worth that real estate, right? But when you're just bringing anybody in, like rent a center, then it's like
No,
they're gonna
Renison.
be not the rent a center. They're gonna be delinquent. They're not looking to buy. They're looking to rent, and rent
Yeah,
typically never goes to rent to own. And then no, we're not doing that.
not
You
doing
come with the
that.
buyer's intent, you know?
Right. You know what, Derek? Like we don't really talk about the pandemic anymore, but I would say, and maybe you can agree, being quarantined, I know it was something, that was put in place for us for health reasons, but during the quarantine, like, it did a lot for me spiritually, like, it took my
Hmm.
discernment to another level because you're away from a lot of distractions, you hear yourself, you get to know your own voice,
Yeah.
you really began to evaluate the people around you, and I wonder, without the pandemic, would I have caught that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's a good
it just
question.
makes you think, like, even though a lot of people, "Oh, I hated it," but looking
Hmm.
back on it now and where I am now versus going into prior to the pandemic, as far as what I pay attention to, what how I hear people, and just perceive the things around me, it's very
Hmm.
different.
Yeah, I would say, in any situation, pandemic or not, there should be something that we take away, even if it's the smallest thing that makes the situation, however, traumatic or great, even more worthwhile, right? Because trauma leads to opportunity, right? They talk about, diamonds under pressure, right? You don't create diamonds just letting it sit out. You put it under pressure, right? And coal creates a diamond, you know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
it takes sometimes uncomfortable pressure in situations to birth something at a higher level that's of higher value, whether that's discernment, whether that is a clearer vision, where that is a better understanding of the who you need in your life and who you don't, right? It births a greater awareness in us that allows us to move very differently in life with more intention, with more higher value, and things that we hold more dearly. And so I'll agree with you. Out of the pandemic, there were so many things that I valued even more, like the time that I spend with people. Quality time is one of my love languages. And so for me, I was very intentional coming out of who I spent time. Time is limited. And so who do I want to spend my time with? I don't want to spend my time with people that's going to worry me, stress me out, cause me anxiety. That's no good for me and my energy. I'm going to spend time with people that brings the best out of me, that raises me to the highest level, that makes me smile and laugh. That's where I want to spend my time with. And so the pandemic really helped me to put things in perspective. It
Mhm.
also required me to, break out of my shell and be more vocal and network more, right? Because
Mm.
hence combos and collabs, like that was birthed from the pandemic, because I was like, I know people are out here, and we're in the house, people need experts to talk about business, people have information to share. Let me just create a space. I have a network, and let me start to leverage that network. I had never really leveraged it before. That's how combos and collabs,
Mm.
really became something that I decided to do in the pandemic as a service to people who were at home. But it required me to step out of my box to do something that I was uncomfortable with, and to learn, and to to self teach myself some things, and start to figure out how to make it happen. And then it came, and I'm grateful for that, because then that energy and that lesson now leads in a lot of things that I do now, right? Like they say, it compounds, right? Everything you learn compounds, it grows, it multiplies. You continue to add to that. You never lose it. You continue to add to it. So
That's really good. Um, Looking back on that now and to where we are now, even, um, me knowing you more,
mhm.
because we did go through even though I met you prior to the pandemic, but going through that together and coming out of it now and just to see, you've always been insightful, but it's like your soul has gotten older in a good way, and your wisdom, it resonates with you. It reverberates with you. Like I can see the growth, I can see the maturity, and just your thought pattern about things. So I definitely agree with you on that. Being more intentional about your time, your space, the things you connect yourselves to. So I can definitely say, yeah, I can see you in that.
Mhm. And I'm more settled in myself. I'm
Mhm.
I'm I'm more settled and grounded on who I am, how I want to show up in the world, how I want to be, perceived. I'm very intentional about being honest and true with Derek. I don't have time to be anybody but me. I don't have
Yeah,
time to try to, live up to someone's expectation of who they think I am, or how I should be, or
that's
whatever the case may
exhausting.
be.
Yeah.
That's not, I have no interest in that whatsoever. And so I am grounded in showing up as who I am, and whoever likes it, great. Let's have a conversation. Whoever doesn't, that's okay. Have a nice day, and there's no love lost because we're not for everybody, and I'm okay with that. I am
And that's okay.
100% okay.
Absolutely love it. You always come here dropping gems, and I definitely want to bring you back. Before we wrap everything up, do you have any like nuggets or gems or takeaways for the listeners and viewers? And then also, where can people find you on social media?
So takeaways. Laugh a lot, live life. I mean, life is to be lived, right? So take that trip, put that away email up, go out to the beach, do the thing that you've been wanting to do that you've been making excuses for that you haven't done yet, right? Visit
That's
that friend, call that person that's been on your mind, do all those things because a lot of times um those are our instincts, right? Telling us to do something. Like it knows, right? Holy Spirit knows what we need, right? And sometimes we'll ignore those things. So be obedient to that inner voice. Take
good.
the break, say yes to the opportunity, right? Don't worry about how to turn out. It'll work itself out. And if it's supposed to be something great, it will be. And if not, you took a lesson from it and you move on, right? But listen and be obedient to that inner voice, to that quiet, still voice, to that instinct that you have inside of you. It's there for a reason. It's there to guide you. It's never to lead you astray. So, and then and cultivate a good circle of people that can call you out and call you, not call you out, that can call you in, right? As we said earlier, call you in, be supportive, but also keep you honest, keep you in integrity, and then you do that for each other. And I think that's what I leave and I give because that's the gift that keeps on giving on both sides.
I love it, and I cannot wait to have you back for another insightful conversation. I really just want to say thank you. I honor you and your time that you take to sit down with me and the viewers. I do not take that lightly. You're such a gem, and I cannot wait to see what you do next. So thank
Uh,
you.
Thank you,
I
thank you, thank you.
You're welcome, and I hope everyone got something from this conversation. Again, thank you to tuning in tonight. Be sure to follow us. We're on Facebook at the Speaker Podcast, on YouTube, Camille Essick Official, on Instagram at Camille.Essick. And you can also send us an email at the Speaker Podcast at gmail.com. Join us next week. We are going to have 2 episodes lined up. You know her, Whitney Victoria. She is coming by. We're gonna have a really good conversation. And then you may know her as Dr. Rowe. Shonda Pratt is dropping in. So the ladies will be jumping in this week. We're gonna have 2 back-to-back conversations on Monday and on Thursday. So be sure to tune in for that. Again, this is Camille Essick. I'm host of the Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast where innovators and critics connect. You guys be blessed, be safe this weekend, and Lord willing, we'll see you on the other side. Good night. Bye.
Bye.